Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com. Hello and welcome to episode 137. 137 is a good number, and in this week's episode, I titled it, How the Cookie Crumbled, Beast Mode Diaries Week 12. And I wanted to talk about my travels to St. Louis last week, how I made progress on my writing goals, which goals I hit, which goals I didn't, what my biggest failures were, and what it's like to travel in the middle of a pandemic. So we're going to talk about all that. But first things first, we need to talk about announcements. I've got 2 new Beast Mode books out, actually 3. So the first is 250 Plus Writing Tips Volume 1. And this is a comprehensive guide to writing, publishing, and marketing your book. It is essentially Writing Tip of the Day podcast, book edition. So I took all the first year's worth of tips from Writing Tip of the Day, condensed them down into a book, and now you can buy it and you can put that on your bookshelf. And it is a pretty big book. It's like, I think like 300 pages or something like that. And so you can get your copy at authorlevelup.com/writingtips1. That's the number 1. authorlevelup.com/writingtips1. And there's lots of tips in there for writing, marketing, business, craft, you name it. It's a pretty hefty compilation. Now, the second book that I have published is The Author Income Problem. And this is how to track your sales without pulling your hair out. And you all know that a few months ago, I put together a book sales database where I took all my sales from all retailers and whipped them up with a nice little Excel/Access homebrew solution. And I don't have to do any data entry anymore. I just, every month, I download my sales reports, I feed them into this little tool, and it adds them all together. And at the click of a button, I can answer virtually any question I have about my writing business. So how many books did I sell in Australia in January of last year? Click, I've got it. How many books did I sell for Be a Writing Machine across all retailers? Click, how many books did I sell on Google Play this year to date? Click, and I've figured out a way to do that. And it is a huge efficiency for me and my business, and my biggest accomplishment over the years. So I talked about in the book how I did that, but more importantly, I talked about how this is such a problem for people and why it's such a problem. And I try to paint a picture of the landscape on why we don't have any solutions for this yet, and who the stakeholders are, what the problems are, how we can solve them, even though the answers in the book are answers that folks may not want to hear, but there is a way to solve it. And then how do we solve it as a community? All right. And so the book for me is really a book of thought leadership to try to raise awareness around the problem, even though I know that this isn't a book that's going to sell very well, but I wanted to do something about this. All right. And you can get that at authorlevelup.com/the author income problem. All right, authorlevelup.com/the author income problem. And the third book that I published is my second to last Beast Mode book, and that is the indie author Bestiary. So this is an epic quest against all the beasts of the writing world. So I took these problems that writers face, such as fear and self-doubt and the inferiority complex and overwhelm and burnout, and I converted them into monsters. So what would the monster of fear look like? And so I converted it into a monster, and it is now a thing for you to slay. So the book is told in the second person, and I am your guide. So it's the 2 of us as we charge this tower that is full of beasts. And it's kind of a fun. It's like a cross between Dante's Inferno and Shadow of the Colossus, the great PlayStation game that came out many years ago. So if you'd like to check that out, you can get the indie author Bestiary at authorlevelup.com/bestiary, and that is spelled BES as in Sam, T as in Tom, I, A, R as in Robert, Y. All right, indie author bestiary. And next thing I want to announce, I've got a lot of announcements. I'm going to be speaking this weekend at the Escape the Plot Force Summit. And that is it starts on the 22nd and it goes through the 25th, I believe. And I'm going to be speaking on mental models for fiction writers. 3 simple models to help you get through the murky middle of your manuscript. Now, I've done a lot of talks, and some of this will be familiar. Some of it will be new. But if anything, you have to attend the talk because I do some bad Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonation. So if you want to hear me impersonate the Governator, then you have to sign up. And it's free, completely free. So I'll put a link in the show notes, but you can attend the summit. There's lots of talkers, lots of speeches, presentations, all toward helping you with plotting and with writing. And it's run by Daniel David Wallace, and he runs a really, really cool operation. So be sure to check it out. And as I said before, it's 100% free. There is a premium pass that you can purchase if you like some of the bonuses that are offered, but you're under no obligation to do that. So, take the time during this pandemic to educate yourself and learn a few new things. And I also want to let folks know that I'm going to be doing my next Writing Power Hour this Saturday, October 24th, from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So I did a Power Hour last month. 64 people joined, and we all wrote toward our next manuscript. We wrote together in 20-minute bursts. Took 5-minute breaks to shoot the breeze. I answered some questions, told some really bad jokes, and then we jumped back into it for another 20 minutes. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm going to be doing these monthly from now on. So you can jump in and grab a link in the show notes. And I just want to make sure that I announce this a couple of times so that folks have the opportunity to attend and move some things around on your schedule if you want to join me. So wins for the week, I'm going to punt those and talk about those in our topic. Lesson learned this week was an interesting thing I learned on a YouTube video that I watched by a gentleman by the name of Ken Honda. Ken Honda is a Japanese business person and an author, and he has some really interesting philosophies and thoughts around money. And one of his books is called Happy Money. I think it's the Japanese art of making money. I don't know if he would use those words, but the subtitle was something similar to that. And he talks about this difference between happy money versus unhappy money. And happy money is money that you treat with respect. It's money that you do things to it so that it goes off and it brings more of its friends back to you. That's happy money. Isn't that such a funny image? Money with a smiley face icon on it. And then unhappy money is money that you don't treat well. It's money that you throw away. It's money that you disrespect. And if you make your money unhappy, you will be poor, or you will make less of it because it won't want to be around you. All right, and that's the basic premise of this video that I watched from Ken Honda, and I thought that was such an interesting way to think about money, particularly as a business person. This year has been a pretty good year for me in terms of profit, and I'm making more money this year than I made last year, and that's great. And so, how can I treat the new money that I'm making with respect? It was an interesting way to think about it. You be good to your money and your money will be good to you. And I thought that was a really interesting point and something I'll be thinking about as I move forward and start doing my budget for the coming year. And the idea of the week was a continuation on that. What if there was such a thing as happy books versus unhappy books? I like to think that the books that I write are happy books. I just told you about 3 books. One of them is, I suppose, commercial, right? It's one that many of you would be interested in, and that was the Writing Tips book. And that's all good because I wrote that with love. And I have 2 other books that were on my heart, which is The Author Income Problem and The Indie Author Bestiary. I don't think anybody would wake up in the morning and say, you know what, I want to read a book on how to track my sales. Or I want to read a book where the author takes the emotional challenges of the writing world and converts them into monsters. I mean, those 2 books were on my heart. They were interesting ideas, but I hope that if you read them, you get the sense that they're happy books, that they're books that were create it with love. And if you're someone who's in my target audience, I hope that you feel that and that inspires you to buy more of my books and get more value out of them. Because ultimately it's about you. I want you to get value from my book so that you can do whatever it is that you want to do in your writing career and follow your dreams. And my theory is that by creating happy books, that creates happy readers and they just feed off of each other. As opposed to unhappy books, which are books that are just written to market, books that are they just kind of phone them in. I mean, we've all read unhappy books, haven't we? Where you buy a book and it's like, this author is just a jerk. They don't care about what they're writing about. They just pulled all this off of Google, and just interesting idea. What could you do in your writing to make your books more happy? Yeah, interesting idea, isn't it? Now, topic of the week. Let's get to the meat of the episode here. So I wanted to talk about my travels to St. Louis. I was born and raised in St. Louis, and it's been 5 years since I've been back to my hometown, St. Louis, Missouri. And I also wanted to talk about my goals to keep beast mode alive. So many of you probably know that when you travel, it's hard to write. So what can I do to keep the momentum alive? All right, so going into this trip, I was in St. Louis from last Wednesday through Saturday. All right, and I had 3 goals. I tried to keep it as simple as possible. The first goal was to maintain inbox zero. So keep 0 emails in my inbox for the entire time so that when I returned home, I didn't have to worry about catching up with emails. I hate catching up with emails. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. So what's in my email inbox is what's on my mind. And if there's nothing in my email inbox, then there's nothing on my mind. I like to try to keep it simple. All right. The second goal was no lapse in my content. So I didn't want to drop the ball on the writer's journey. I didn't want to drop the ball on my YouTube content. And I didn't want to drop the ball writing tip of the day or my blog. And that's a lot of balls to make sure I didn't drop. And that was important to me. And then the last goal was to write 5,000 words toward my Good Necromancer book 2. All right. So how did I do? Well, first things first, let's talk about how things went. So you all know that I like to write on my phone. That's how I get things done. So my thought process going into this was, well, I'm not driving for most of the trip. So that's 6 hours in the car. I could write on my phone for at least maybe an hour of that, without getting too car sick. So that could be some good time. I thought, well, I'm not going to drive on the way back either, so that could be some good time to get writing in. I'm going to have time in the morning before I have to start doing stuff. I'm going to have time throughout the day because when we travel, there's usually a lot of downtime. Going to have some time at night as we're winding down. And so I thought there should be plenty of opportunities, 1, to check the emails, and then 2, to get the writing done. And what I found traveling this time around, traveling is kind of like it's like a mixed bag. Like for me, because I never, like you can plan on a trip, but you never know how it's going to actually go. So like a few years ago, I traveled to Washington, D.C. For a family vacation, and we were there for a week. And I thought maybe I'd get like 1,000 words in, and I ended up writing like 7,000 words because we had a lot of downtime. And I was feeling good enough that I could do it, right? And I was thinking, okay, well, this could either be like DC or maybe I'll get no words in, but better to aim high than to aim low. And this vacation ended up being there was a lot less downtime. So I went and I had to teach a class, an insurance class. I went all the way down to St. Louis to teach a virtual class, but that's because I didn't use my calendar properly and ended up overbooking this class over the vacation. So I had to rent a hotel boardroom and teach the class so that I didn't miss it because it's a contractual thing. So I had to do that, and then we drove around the city quite a bit. St. Louis. One of the things about St. Louis is the traffic. It takes 45 minutes to almost get anywhere one way, especially if you're in traffic. Right. And especially, I shouldn't say anywhere because it depends on where you're going, but the places where I was going, my grandmother lives on the north side of the city. My sister lives on the south side of the city. and I've got uncles and cousins that live somewhere between, and so driving from one place to another, we always seem to get stuck in rush hour traffic. So it just is what it is. So we had to do a lot more driving, and just there was some stress in traveling under the pandemic. The hotel was actually very clean. It was great. We stayed at an Embassy Suites, and there's usually no problems there. And honestly, aside from the stickers on the floor and a bunch of people walking around wearing masks, you would never know we were in the middle of a pandemic. It was a little weird in that regard. Some things were different, like you have to request housekeeping. Like you can't, like housekeeping won't come and knock on your door. You've got to request them, and then like the breakfast, everything is boxed. There's no hot. There was some hot food, but I don't know who in their right mind would eat it because you just never know. And so everything was just different in that regard, and a lot of things weren't different at all. It was really, really weird. And when we visited family, we visited them in their driveway. So we would drive to their house, and we'd get out of our car, and we'd stay like 12 feet away from each other and talk. So we never went inside anyone's house. We had masks on the entire time, at least when we were in public. And it was kind of a surreal experience. And so the reason I say all that is because as we were doing what we needed to do, I had a lot less downtime because there was a lot more time. We had to disinfect everything, had to take showers more frequently. And so the downtime that I thought I had in my mind didn't really happen. So as far as the progress that I made, let's just talk about the goals, and then I'll talk about some things that I actually did accomplish. First goal was to maintain inbox zero. I succeeded in doing that. So that was a good thing. No lapse in content, had everything pushed out. We were good to go. But I did not meet my goal of 5,000 words. In fact, I only wrote about 750, which is what I was supposed to write every single day. But I spent time with my family. I got to see relatives that I hadn't got to see for a while. I mean, I talked to most of my family once a week, but that's way more important than an arbitrary goal that you set. I mean, I didn't write 5,000 words. Okay, no one's going to come to my house and shoot me, right? So about 750 words. But I'll tell you what, if I hadn't learned how to write on my phone, I would have written anything. I mean, I would have had 0 words. So at least I came out of the trip with a little bit of momentum toward my story. I consider, even though it was a failure in terms of the goal I set for myself, I would consider that a win. I mean, hell, if my goal was 1,000 words for the entire trip and I wrote 750, I would consider that a victory, wouldn't you? I mean, so sometimes it just goes to show you with traveling, you just never know what you're going to be able to do. Like I said, this was definitely on the lower end. And I think in the future, traveling during the pandemic, while the pandemic is still happening, I'm probably going to set my goals for words a little bit lower because you just never know. But I will tell you that I got a lot accomplished. Like, even though I didn't write very many words, I just wanted to talk about the things that I actually did accomplish. The first was that I published 2 books. And the 2 books that I published were writing tips, 250 plus writing tips, and the author income problem. So I happened to have my laptop with me because I was teaching this class. And so normally I would not travel with it, but because I did, I was actually able to get a lot done. So I got 2 books published because I got them back from my cover designer. And so I slapped the cover into the vellum file because they were already formatted. It took me about 20 minutes to upload each of the books to all the retailers. And there you go. So I got 2 books published. That's a victory. I got 2 book covers back from my cover designer. So my cover designer was working on 2 other books, sent those back to me, which was a good thing. I also was able to order another book cover. So I got a book back from my editor. And so I was able to get that into vellum real quickly. And then I was able to find some inspiration for images that I wanted on it, and I was able to send those over to my book cover designer. So that's some momentum. I got an edit back, like I said. That was a good thing. I'm working on a book called Project Atlas right now, and my designer sent me a few of the maps that are going to go into this atlas, and I was able to correspond with her via email. Did some research for this series that I'm writing, the Good Necromancer series. It takes place in St. Louis, and so some of the places that we went to were some good fodder for the future series. So that was good. I taught an insurance class on the road. I didn't even tell them that I was doing that, and yeah, and the boardroom expense that I had to pay. That's going to be tax deductible. So that's kind of a victory at the end of the year for business. And so all in all, I felt really good about the trip, even though I didn't accomplish all the goals. I came home to no items pending. I could take a day of rest. So Sunday I was able to get some sleep and not worry about any writing goals. And I didn't have to worry about falling behind or catching up. And I was able to hit the ground running on Monday. And that's a good thing. Overall, I felt really good about all the things that I was able to accomplish, and I didn't feel that bad about not being able to write very much because I was still able to move a lot of things forward with the writing, and so that's good. And Beast Mode is going to be coming to an end very soon. So next week is the last Beast Mode diary book. Or not diary book, goodness gracious, Beast Mode diary episode. So I'm publishing one more book. It's like I said, Project Atlas. It should be out by the next episode, so I'll be able to announce that. And it's going to have some really beautiful maps in it, and I'm excited for this one. That'll be my last Beast Mode book. I will not be able to finish this novel that I'm working on by the end of October, not without pulling my hair out. And so now I have to start thinking about what's next. And the next thing I'm going to do, and I'll talk more about this as I kind of fully form it, but, I've got 5 strategic priorities. This Beast Mode definitely hit the become a world-class content creator strategic priority, right? Just, write 7 books in 90 days, volume is important. But now I need to start thinking about other areas of the business because I've diverted a lot of attention and resources to Beast Mode. So what's the next Beast Mode I want to go into? And I'm not going to go as crazy with this next one. It'll be, more subtle. It'll just be a focus. But it's going to be on marketing. So I've been doing some deep dives into my data and looking at what the marketing opportunities are. And so I've got a handful of books where I want to try to improve my sales over the next 90 days. So from November 1st through sometime around the end of January, I may not go as long with this. I'm going to start focusing on that. And I'm going to kind of pretend that I don't know anything about marketing. So I'm calling it amnesia mode, I think. And forget everything I learned and try some new things that maybe I wouldn't have tried before. And we'll see what happens. So that's kind of my next initiative. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And like I said, I'll share more about that as we get toward it. But that concludes all the information I had for this episode. Hope everybody's doing great. Hope you're happy and healthy. And I'll holler at you next week. Peace. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.